How do I identify my sexual shadow? And at first, I didn't actually want to answer this question because I didn't really like the way that it was phrased. But then I realized the fact that I don't like the way that it's phrased is exactly why I should answer this question. It is actually really easy to identify what elements of your sexuality are in the shadow, and I'm going to walk you through how to figure that out and how to integrate it. But I'm also going to explain how asking this question this way kind of isn't really doing you any good. So let's talk about it. First of all, the reason I don't really like the way this question is framed is because you don't have a sexual shadow. You have a shadow, and some of the stuff in it is related to sexuality and some of it isn't. The shadow isn't a series of thoughts. The shadow is a place. The shadow is where you put all the thoughts and emotions that you wish you didn't have. When you shove them all aside, they go into a place called the shadow. So you don't really have a sexual shadow. You have a shadow that may or may not have sexual stuff in it. So that's the proper way to think about this. The shadow is a place. Your thoughts aren't shadows. Parts of your personality are not shadows. Parts of your personality might have been banished to the shadow, but they are not shadows. The shadow is a place. And so when it comes to identifying what material you have put in the shadow that relates to sex, the actual real question that's going to help you is, what area of my sexual experience am I not 100% satisfied with? Because if you ask that question, then you'll start to notice all the different parts of your personality that may or may not be in the shadow that are creating all the circumstances that you don't like and are unsatisfied by. So if you start asking yourself, okay, what elements of my sexuality am I not happy with? Then you're going to start getting much more productive answers. So I've prepared a couple questions here to ask you to see just what they bring up in you. How satisfied are you with your sex life? Just in a general sense, scale of 1 to 10. Are you having the kind of sex you really want to be having? Like, do you have any unfulfilled fantasies? Is there some things you really want to be doing that you're not doing? That sort of shit. And are you having it with the kinds of people that you really want to be having it with? Right? Like, if you're having sex, are you thinking, oh no, I wish I was having sex with this other different kind of person? Or it's like, God, I'm kind of settling, or this is the best I can do, or, whatever else. Are you having the kind of sex you want with the kind of people you want to be having it with? And are you having it as much as you want to be having it? Those are some pretty easy intro questions. So now you can start to ask, do you actually feel really happy and satisfied when it's over? Or you feel kind of like sad and maybe hollow, or just not all that satisfied when it's over? Do you even enjoy pursuing sex? Like, are you afraid of rejection? Are you ashamed of your sex to the point where it's like asking for what you want or trying to get what you want makes you uncomfortable, some shit like that? And so if you start asking questions like these, you'll get a pretty good idea of where in your life the things in your shadow may be controlling your experience, right? Because if you're not having the kind of sex that you want, it's because the part of you that wants those things is probably in the shadow. And if you're not having sex with the kind of people that you want to have, well, then the part of you that could attract them is probably in the shadow. Same with all these other things. If you're not 100% satisfied with your experience of sexuality right now, it's because some part of you that you don't know is running the scene from outside of your awareness. And so it just becomes a matter of, what do I think about sex? What do I believe about sex? How do I relate to my own sexual energy? How do I relate to the sexual energy in those around me? And asking those questions will give you so much information. I'm sure some of you, just hearing me ask these questions, are potentially starting to get a little uncomfortable, potentially starting to see some things and be like, oh shit, yeah, actually this isn't as good as I want it. And that's great, because that gives you an opportunity to explore why. Because the thing you have to consider is that one of the essential elements of shadow integration, or at least as I teach it, is the understanding that you do absolutely everything on purpose. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've done it more than twice, you do it on purpose. So if you've had unsatisfying sex more than twice, some part of you is aiming at that for one reason or another. Whether it's, you're afraid to bring out your desires, you're afraid to pursue the people you're really attracted to, you don't actually connect to the people that you're able to share your sexual experiences with, so they feel hollow, blah, 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 blah. Whatever, there's always going to be some reason for your experience. Some part of you will have created it on purpose for one reason or another. And the question is just simply at that point, why am I creating this? What am I getting out of this? What am I afraid of? What am I hoping to avoid? And ultimately, what benefit does me creating this experience that I don't want give me? And if you can answer those types of questions, you'll be well on your way to integrating the pattern and actually creating that which you do like. So this has been really theoretical. So at this point, I kind of want to give you an example from my own personal life. When it came to sex, I used to kind of have this split in my personality, right? Where it was like the women I would fall in love with were not the women that I had the really good sex with, and the women that I had the really good sex with were not the women that I fell in love with. And this was really frustrating because I would fall in love with these women, but I would be sexually unsatisfied. Or I would find this woman that was really hot and did all the things that I wanted to do, but she was a fucking mess, and I couldn't actually connect to her or experience any kind of intimacy or anything like that. And maybe this is pretty common, so maybe y'all might have a relationship like this. Like if you're a woman, maybe like you're really attracted to the bad guys, but you fall in love with the good guys, and there's this displacement that doesn't quite work. I had to take responsibility for the fact that if that's the case, I'm doing it on purpose. So I had to ask myself why. And for me, the answer was fear and shame. Right? Like I was afraid that the good girls wouldn't want to do some of the like nastier shit I wanted to do. So I did them with the bad girls who didn't really seem to care about themselves all that much and didn't respect themselves. And so what the fuck do I care? But I also noticed that I was afraid to bring my heart to the bad girls because it just genuinely wasn't safe. So what I had to do was address the fear and the shame in relationship to bringing all of myself to the women I could actually trust and did actually want to be close to, so that I could find the ones that were good and trustworthy and worthy of my time and energy and all that sort of stuff that I could completely be myself with. And there's a ton of other different ways this can show up, right? Like I've had sexual dysfunction in the past, every kind you can imagine, and it always ends up being psychological, right? Like I had, premature ejaculation for a little bit. That was just fear. That was just me being afraid of my own pleasure. Me thinking that my pleasure was bad and wrong because I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. And so they told me that sex outside of marriage is like evil and terrible and blah, blah, blah. So when I would get in the room and it would be like, okay, great, we're going to do this thing that I've been told God will hate me for. And my body's response was, well, get it done with as soon as you can, bro. And so it's like, okay, cool. I can respect why you'd say that, but that's not the best way to handle this. Sex can actually be something I enjoy. It can be good. So as I dealt with all that shame and all that fear, suddenly my body started working the way that I wanted it to. So regardless of what your sexual experience is, whether it's getting the wrong people, the wrong types of sex, maybe your body doesn't perform or whatever, you'll always be able to trace that down to something psychological if you ask the questions and are genuinely open to hearing the answers. Now, the answers can be quite confronting because sexuality is so deep and it's so vulnerable and it's so tied to our survival mechanisms. And throughout all of human history and evolution, our ability to procreate has essentially been the deepest validation of our value as human beings, right? So sexuality, when you find out that maybe you're afraid of it, or you find out that maybe you feel weak or whatever, or have some attitudes about it that are less than desirable, it can be pretty confronting. So if you're going to start asking these questions, be ready for answers that you may not like. But like the Carl Jung quote says, what you need most will be where you least want to look. The more it hurts to become aware of something, the more desperately you needed it. Because that part of you, that the more that it hurts, the more that part of you is in pain, and the more transformation you will get as a result of turning that pain into a healthy way of expressing itself. So when it comes down to like figuring out what your sexual shadow is, like honestly, it doesn't matter. I don't think that's a thing. It's just a matter of how much of me is aligned towards creating that which I truly desire. And a good question to even ask yourself from the beginning is, how clear are you on what you even desire? A lot of people don't even know what they want. And so it's like, no shit, you're not having a good time because you never really actually figured out what you wanted. And so take some time to figure out, like, what does sex even mean to you? What kind of people do you actually want to be having it with? What would satisfying sex look like to you? Like if you were to have the ideal sexual experience and when it's done, you just feel satisfied and elated and fulfilled and it's life affirming. And you're like, yeah, that's sex. That's why we do this. Like, what would that look like for you? What kind of person would it take to help co-create that with you? Who would you have to become in order to be the embodiment of that? Like, all these questions are how you're going to start figuring out who you really are and what you really want and how you want to be. And then it's just a matter of figuring out what part of your personality is out of alignment with it, right? Because this is just my whole integrative framework. You figure out, what kind of person do I want to be sexually? What am I attracted to? What am I not attracted to? Why do I like this? Why do I not like this thing? And what do I want? How do I create it? Who do I have to be? Like, all these kinds of questions are the ones going to help you get in alignment with that which you really want. And it will allow you to become aware of all the parts in your shadow that are going to stand in the way of you having it. Then you just talk to them. It's like, cool. Like for me, it was like, okay, why do we keep coming so early, bro? This sucks. Like, it's embarrassing. Sex could be way more fun. And I'm pretty sure she's not that satisfied. So this is not the optimal way of doing this. Like, how can we improve this? And just by talking to that part of myself, I realized that it was just shame. And so I was like, all right, dog, cool. Like, you're ashamed. That's fine. I love you. Let's make sure we don't do anything truly shameful. And then everything else is up for grabs. So cool. Let's have a good time. And so it's just a matter of figuring out why whatever part of you is doing whatever it's doing, understanding that that's okay, and then finding a better way to take care of it and giving it a little bit of love so that it's okay to be what it is. Like, sexuality doesn't have to be this big, scary, difficult thing, although it is vulnerable, and so it's some of the hardest energy to deal with. But it's just, it gets so mystified for no reason. And it's really just a matter of like, what do you want? How much of you is in alignment with it? And the degree to which you're not in alignment with it, like why? What can you do about it? And, you know, if you want more help with this, right, because I'm not going to teach you my whole integrative framework in a 10-minute YouTube video or however long this ends up being, but if this has piqued your interest and you have some curiosity about this, I have a whole Discord channel where you can come in, you can ask me questions about this sort of stuff. I'm in there coaching every day. We've got groups for sexuality, we've got groups for love, we've got men's groups, we've got women's groups, we've got whatever you might need. So come in and talk there for free. If any of this is interesting to you, I'd be happy to go in more detail. And I also do have a free course if you want to learn more about the integrative process. There's a free course. There's going to be a link to it below. You can learn all about my integrative process. You can come talk to me for free in Discord, and I will answer all of these questions, and I will coach you through whatever it is you're dealing with, because sex is one of the things that can bring you the most satisfaction and fulfillment. And I know it's like an old hippie cliche, but sexual energy really is tied to creative energy. I notice that as the more comfortable I get with my sexual energy, the more fun I have creating. And they really are connected. I don't fully understand the connection yet, but I do know that they're connected. And so there's so much more to gain from this just through having sex. You know, like if you want to remain celibate till marriage, great, that's totally fine. You can still explore your own sexuality and your own relationship to it just by imagining like the person that you do want to get married to. Like, how might they be? What might them be like? And what kind of person might you need to turn into in order to be ready for that? You know, like there are things you can do no matter what your orientation or proclivity is. Like it's entirely up to you, but whatever it is you want, you can still do the internal work to get yourself in alignment with it. And if you don't, you're leaving a whole shitload of stuff on the table. So like I said, let me know if you have any other questions. Come into the Discord. I'd be happy to talk about this. Check out my free course if you want to learn about integration. And I'm Chris Roscoe. I love you, and I'll see you next time.